Let me propose a scenario for you, a hypothetical one.
Okay, I'm listening.
Imagine you have a team of 5 people. They are incredibly intelligent, PhD level. They are entirely obsessed with your success.
That sounds like a dream.
Right. And they're willing to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No sleep, no coffee breaks.
It sounds like a scam, honestly.
What?
Or, a fantasy reserved for a Fortune 500 CEO.
It does. But what if the cost for this entire team was just $20 a month?
Yeah, that's the hook.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are unpacking a fascinating guide called Mastering Your Personal AI Assistant.
And we really need to talk about that $20 a month team.
Yeah.
Because that is the reality of the current AI models.
But there is a massive gap between owning the team and knowing how to lead it.
That is the crux of it. Most
Yeah.
people are using this technology like a fidget spinner, but it is actually a power tool.
The source material uses a great analogy for this.
Yeah, it is like buying a Ferrari.
Yeah.
And only using it to drive to your neighbor's house at 10 miles per hour.
We see this all the time. People use it to write a limerick or a generic email. They treat it like a novelty search engine.
Right. Give me a recipe. Or who won the World Cup in 1998?
So they are just using it for simple Q&A. They aren't looking under the hood.
They aren't, and that is a massive missed opportunity.
So today we are going to look under the hood. We aren't talking about simple hacks or cheat codes.
No, we are talking about building a system.
The guide outlines 5 specific strategies: building a persistent brain, parallel processing, removing cognitive bias, accelerated learning, and surprisingly, emotional regulation.
And just to set the stage for you, these aren't just distinct tricks. They represent a fundamental shift in mindset.
Moving from chatting with a bot to programming a workflow.
Exactly.
Let's start with the first hurdle, the one I think stops most sophisticated users from really integrating this into their deep work.
The fatigue of starting over.
The amnesia problem. It is a real friction point. I have felt this.
Oh, absolutely.
You open a new chat, and it is a completely blank slate. You have to explain who you are, what you are working on, your tone, your constraints.
It feels like onboarding a new intern every single morning.
It is exhausting. I still wrestle with prompt drift myself.
Prompt drift.
When the AI forgets your original goal during a long conversation, I get lazy with my instructions because I am tired of repeating myself.
Yeah, that makes sense. The source compares a fresh AI chat to an elderly person with severe memory loss. It is tragic, but accurate.
You introduce yourself, you explain your context, the window closes.
And the next time you open it, they ask who you are again. It doesn't know you. It doesn't know your goals.
The strategy 1 is about curing the amnesia. The guide calls this building a persistent brain.
Right.
But this isn't just about typing a bio into a box, is it?
No. It is a specific 3-step extraction method. And the first step is surprisingly low-tech. It is called extract. And you do it via voice mode.
Why voice mode? Why not just sit down and type it out?
Because when we type, we self-edit. We try to be professional. We try to be concise.
We filter ourselves.
Exactly. When we speak, we are messy. We are honest. We are comprehensive. So the strategy is to open the app, hit the microphone, and ask the AI to interview you.
You role play.
You say, you are my manager. Interview me for 15 minutes. Ask me about my job, my communication style, my goals, and my weaknesses.
My weaknesses. That is an interesting inclusion.
It is essential. If it doesn't know where you struggle, it cannot help you compensate. So you just spend 15 minutes dumping your brain onto the table.
You don't worry about grammar.
No, you just talk.
Okay, so you have this massive rambling transcript. What is step 2?
Step 2 is synthesize. You don't paste that massive transcript into the settings. It is way too long.
Right.
You ask the AI to analyze the transcript, distill it into a user manual. You want bullet points on who you are, how you work, and what you value.
And that distilled manual goes into the custom instructions.
Precisely. Custom instructions are just a settings menu where you save your personal rules and preferences.
So now every single time you open a new chat, that context is preloaded.
It is the difference between meeting a stranger and meeting an old colleague. They already know the shorthand.
The source also mentions projects as the third component of this. Is that different from custom instructions?
It is. And this is a feature a lot of power users completely miss. Think of custom instructions as your personality. That is global.
Okay.
Projects are specific workspaces. You can create a project for coding. The AI behaves like a senior engineer there. You create a separate project for health. It acts like a brutal personal trainer.
So you are compartmentalizing the AI's brain so it doesn't get confused.
And so you don't get confused. If I'm asking for Python help, I don't want the AI to reference my diet plan. It keeps the context from bleeding into each other.
It creates a baseline. It stops you from having to do the heavy lifting of context setting every time you sit down to work.
Yeah,
So it stops being a tool and starts being a collaborator.
exactly. It moves from a search engine to a personalized digital extension.
Which leads us perfectly into strategy 2. This addresses the sheer scale of what we can do.
The eight-armed hero.
I love this visual. Humans are biologically single-threaded. We can really only do one meaningful cognitive task at a time.
Right. If you are writing an email, you are not analyzing a spreadsheet.
But the AI is parallel. It can do many things at once.
The problem is most of us are only using one of its arms. We treat it like a simple chatbot. One question, one answer.
How do we unlock the other 7 arms?
The guide calls this agent mode. Now, to be clear, this isn't a specific button in the interface.
It is a method of prompting.
Right. Agent mode means assigning a whole multi-step workflow instead of just asking one question. You stop doing the small tasks one by one.
Walk us through an example of this. Let's say I am in sales.
Okay. The old way.
Mm.
You need to find leads. You Google coffee shops in London. You click a link. You find the email. You copy. You paste into Excel.
And you repeat that 30 times.
It is soul-crushing manual labor, and it takes 2 hours. The agent mode way is different. You give one comprehensive prompt. You say, I need a table of 30 independent coffee shops in East London. Find their names, their public email addresses, and their Instagram handles. Format it as a CSV.
And
then you walk away.
you leave the desk.
You go get a glass of water. You let the machine do the machine work. You come back, and the table is ready. You aren't participating in the search. You are managing the searcher.
That distinction is key, managing the searcher.
Yeah.
But there is a nuance here with research, right? The source talks about deep research as another arm of this hero.
Oh, this is the best part. It is the ability to ingest massive amounts of information. Let's say you are buying a laptop, or you are a lawyer looking for a precedent.
Or a student with 3 dense textbooks.
Right. You upload all the PDFs, and you say, read these.
Hmm?
But, and this is critical, you don't just say summarize.
Because if you just say summarize, you get fluff, a generic book report.
Exactly. You have to give it a specific lens. You say, read these 3 manuals, compare the battery life, screen quality, and thermal performance. Specifically for a video editor's needs. Ignore the marketing fluff.
So you are constraining it. You are telling it what to ignore as much as what to look for.
Whoa! Beat. Imagine the scale. Reading 300 pages of technical specs in seconds to find the one nugget you need. It extracts the needle and burns the haystack.
Does this degrade our ability to research or enhance it?
It's just the skill from reading fast to asking the right questions.
That makes sense. If you ask a bad question, you get a hallucination.
An hallucination.
When the AI confidently makes up fake information or false facts.
Right. But if you ask a precise question, you get a superpower.
Which leads us to strategy 3. Because sometimes the question we need to ask is the one we are most afraid of. The question is, where am I wrong?
Strategy 3, the devil's advocate.
The source talks about the wooden chair bias.
Right. If you build a chair yourself, you love it. Even if one leg is wobbly and it gives you splinters.
You think it is a masterpiece because you made it.
We are entirely blind to the faults in our own ideas. And usually we use AI to validate us. We say, here is my business plan. Isn't it great?
And the AI, being a helpful bot, says, yes, it is wonderful.
Which is useless. It feels good, but it is useless. We need to flip the prompt. We need to force the AI to attack our ideas.
How do we do that without it just being unhelpful or rude?
You use rival prompts. You explicitly tell it to adopt a persona. Act as my biggest competitor. Look at my bakery's business plan. Tell me 3 reasons why I will go bankrupt in the first year.
You tell it to be harsh.
You have to give it permission to take the gloves off. It might sting to read, but wouldn't you rather a machine tell you your pricing is fatal today than the market tell you by bankrupting you next year?
I have to play devil's advocate myself here. Isn't that dangerous? Asking a machine to critique your life choices or your business, it doesn't actually know you.
That is a valid fear. But I would argue that is exactly why it works. It doesn't know you. It doesn't care about your feelings, your friends, your colleagues. They have social capital to preserve. They might lie to be nice.
The AI won't.
It won't. There is a specific prompt in the guide called the blind spot check.
I saw that when it gave me pause.
It is heavy. You ask, based on everything you know about me from our previous chats, what am I failing to see right now?
That requires a huge amount of trust.
It does. And you have to be ready for the answer. It acts as a mirror. It might say, you talk a lot about starting a business, but your tasks are all related to research and never execution.
Ouch.
It calls you out. But that is the system level of use. It is not just generating text, it is generating insight.
Why is it easier to take this critique from a machine than a person?
Because the machine has no ego in the game. It is pure raw logic.
Let's pivot to strategy 4. We have talked about work and critique. Now let's talk about learning. The source opens with a fascinating story about Max Planck.
The physicist. And his driver.
Right, the driver versus the scientist. So Max Planck is touring Germany, giving lectures on quantum mechanics. His driver sits in the back of the room every night and memorizes the speech.
He hears it 50 times.
Exactly. One night, Planck is exhausted, so the driver says, I can give the lecture. And he does. He delivers it perfectly, word for word.
But then a physicist in the audience stands up and asks a complex follow-up question.
And the driver freezes because he knew the definitions, but he didn't understand the meaning. He had mimicry, not mastery.
And the danger is we use AI exactly like that driver.
You do.
We ask it to write an email about Q3 financial projections. We paste it. We hit send. We sound smart. But we learn absolutely nothing.
So how do we use the AI to become the scientist instead of the driver?
We use it to build mental scaffolding. One technique is the jargon translator. If you were trying to understand a complex topic, the stock market or blockchain, don't ask for a textbook definition.
Because that just gives you more words you don't understand.
Exactly. Ask for analogy. Explain short selling using apples at a local fruit market. Suddenly, high finance becomes a simple story about borrowing apples, selling them, and hoping the price drops before you have to buy them back.
It hooks the new information onto something you already understand.
Right. But the most powerful technique here is the degree download, or the teach-back method. This is where you flip the roles completely. You become the student, and the AI becomes the professor.
How does that prompt actually work?
You ask the AI to teach you a concept, let's say persuasive writing. After it explains the rules, you say, now give me a test. I will write a paragraph. And you grade it against the rules you just taught me.
So you are actually doing the work.
You are closing the feedback loop. You write the paragraph. The AI says B-. You miss the call to action, and you try again. That is how humans actually learn, through struggle and feedback, not just reading.
So we aren't just copy-pasting smart words.
Right. We use the AI to build actual mental scaffolding for the topic.
We have covered efficiency, research, critique, and learning. But the final strategy takes a hard left turn. Strategy 5 deals with something we rarely associate with AI.
Emotion.
The executive coach. The source calls this the lonely king problem.
It is a reality for anyone in a leadership position, or honestly, anyone with a high-pressure job. There are things you cannot say to your boss because it shows weakness.
Right.
There are things you cannot say to your team because it causes panic, and you cannot always dump it on your spouse.
So you have no outlet.
You have no outlet. The AI acts as the blank page that talks back. It is a safe space to process chaos.
One of the techniques mentioned is the vomit mirror. The name is vivid, to say the least.
It is visceral, but incredibly effective. This is for when you are completely overwhelmed, you use voice mode, and you say, I am going to vent for 5 minutes. Do not interrupt me. Just listen.
And you just let it all out.
You complain. You worry. You spiral. Then, once the emotion is out, you ask the AI to sort the mess. You say, review what I just said. Group my problems into 3 lists. Things I can fix today, things I need to delegate, and things I should ignore.
It turns an emotional breakdown into a to-do list.
It operationalizes the anxiety.
Right.
It takes this subjective mess and turns it into objective tasks.
There's also the stoic mirror.
Yeah. This is for failure. Let's say you failed an exam. You ask the AI to reframe that bad event as an opportunity to improve. You literally argue with it to process your emotions.
And the decision mirror.
This is for the big forks in the road. Should I move to a new city? Should I quit my job? We often spin in circles with these choices. The strategy here is to explain your reasoning to the AI, step by step.
And ask it to check your logic.
Right. You aren't asking it to decide for you.
No, never let it decide.
You are asking it to check the process of your decision. Is my reasoning sound? Am I falling for the sunk cost fallacy? Am I acting out of fear?
It helps you see your own thoughts clearly. Is this about the AI giving advice or just hearing ourselves think?
It is a mirror. It organizes our chaotic thoughts so we can see them.
We have covered a lot of ground today, from the persistent brain to the decision mirror, but I want to zoom out for a second. The source ends with a deep reflection on the future human edge.
It is a powerful place to land. For the last 100 years, the industrial age, the information age, humans have been trying to act like machines.
We try to be efficient, fast, consistent, emotionless.
We valued typing speed, rote memorization, calculation. We tried to be robots. But now, the real robots are here.
And they are better at being robots than we will ever be.
They can read more, type faster, calculate quicker.
So where does that leave us? If we cannot compete on efficiency, what is left?
It leaves us with permission to be human again.
That is a relief. But what does that actually mean in a practical work context?
It means the value shifts entirely. The things the AI cannot do. Empathy, genuine connection, looking someone in the eye, making a creative leap that defies logic. Those become the premium skills.
The machine does the machine work, so the human can do the human work.
Exactly. If you use these strategies, if you use agent mode to automate the boring stuff and the persistent brain to skip the setup, you get your time back. The question is, what do you do at that time?
Do you just fill it with more machine work?
Or do you use it to mentor your team, to think deeply about a strategy, to go home and see your kids? That is the choice this technology presents.
It is not just about getting more done. It is about doing the right things.
It is a compelling vision. We have thrown a lot of strategies at you today. It might feel overwhelming to try and implement all 5 at once.
Don't try to do all 5. That is a recipe for failure. The source suggests a simple call to action. Just try strategy 1 today.
Just the persistent brain.
Take 10 minutes. Open the app. Turn on voice mode and introduce yourself. Here is who I am. Here's what I do. Here's what I value. Get that synthesized. Put it in your custom instructions.
It is a small step, but it changes the relationship from user and tool to human and assistant. And honestly, once you see it work, you will not want to go back.
This tool is sitting on your desk right now, or in your pocket. Use it to get your free time back and your humanity back, which leaves me with a final thought for you to mull over. If we successfully outsource our logic, our research, and our scheduling to these personalized assistants, what happens when your AI starts negotiating directly with my AI without either of us in the loop?
Now, there is a rabbit hole for next time.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We will see you next time.